Welcome to another enlightening episode of our podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lulu, and today we have a special guest joining us to explore the fascinating world of therapy in a bottle and how it can help break the subconscious patterns. Our guest is Nick Fransen, a licensed acupuncturist and functional medicine specialist. He's the owner of Privia Natural supplements and has an impressive track record of helping over 1,000 women overcome their past trauma without therapy. Nick's expertise has taken him across the globe, collaborating with renowned doctors such as Dr. Thomas Rau, MD of the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland, and Reimar Banis, MD of Germany, among others. With his experience as a lead clinician at the Hope for Cancer Medical Center in Tijuana, Mexico, Nick now operates the Fransen Center for Advanced Medicine, where he specializes in addressing emotional trauma, depression, anxiety, pain, autoimmune diseases, and autism. Join us as Nick Fransen sheds light on the groundbreaking Rubimed therapy from Europe, revealing how it holds the potential to unlock the secrets of negative subconscious patterns that may be holding us back in life. So without further ado, let's dive into this transformative discussion on therapy in a bottle, cracking subconscious patterns with Nick Fransen. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome our fabulous guest today, Nick Fransen. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, great to be here, Doc. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. I love that painting in the background there with those trees. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's a little big for my wall, but I just can't seem to take it down.
Sometimes that happens, right? The artwork takes over. Yeah. Before we dive into our conversation today, Nick, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell a little bit about who you are, what makes you tick, and if you have anything special you want to bring to the table for our discussion today.
Yeah, my name is Nicholas Fransen. I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I've been in the field now for quite a while. Before being an acupuncture, I worked for several companies out of Germany. So I was lucky enough to be trained by a lot of German doctors and get that whole naturopathic sort of feeling that comes from Europe. And I've done lots of different things. I worked at a cancer clinic in Mexico for a while, and just great to be here. And I use everything from acupuncture to homeopathic remedies to supplements to just about anything that works. That's the name of the game, right?
Yes, I love that, Nick. And my family's from Germany. I've been there many times. I love Germany. It's just a fabulous place to visit. I wish I could. Maybe I'll live there one day.
There you go.
Yeah. And I really like what you said too about what works, because that's a really important part about being a health practitioner, helping our patients with things that work, because we have a big suitcase, so to speak, of our tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's always new stuff happening, so you have to stay up on the thing.
Yeah, exactly. When I went to Bastyr University in Seattle, and Dr. Bastyr, who founded the school, he always had a saying that to make sure you're reading one research paper at night before bed. So I'm not sure that was to put you to sleep or to keep you maybe on top of things.
Yeah, I think the sleep part might have been what he was trying to get at.
I think so. I first would love to open our discussion today to talking about negative subconscious patterns, because I know this is a big piece that you work with. So can you kind of elaborate on what exactly is a negative subconscious pattern? I know people probably are familiar with the term like subconsciousness, but in relationship to a pattern, and then how can those patterns influence our lives from the particular place and aspect of healing?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, because a lot of us really don't understand how much a subconscious program can run our lives. We don't think, what do you mean by a program? A belief system about how the world runs, about how we're supposed to fit in it, or about how we think of ourselves. So these are really what run our lives. There's three main ways that we develop these subconscious patterns. First one is learned behavior. So before the age of 7, we have parents, we have teachers, we have aunts and uncles and grandparents, and their whole job is to program us with good material that we can use throughout our lives. But sometimes we get programmed with things that may not be that great. And eventually, by the time we're 7, a lot of these programs are set. Here's how I'm supposed to fit in. Here's this is expected of me in society. And here's what my life's going to look like going forward. But a lot of times those beliefs can really, really take a turn for the worst. And those can happen when we're young, but they can also happen during any time in life. And let me give you a quick example. Okay. I had a lady one time, she was in her about her early 30s, and she had an eating disorder problem. And she had about a decade of 10, 15 years of binging and eating and bulimia and anorexia. And as we started going through our treatment, she about 3 months in said, I know where this started. And she said, when I was 16 years old, I was a track star and I got on the scale we were doing a weigh-in for some reason. And she said, my coach said, oh, you're 2 pounds overweight. Now, at that moment, she and you and I have a choice to say, coach, that's crazy. You're out of your mind. Get out of here. Leave me alone. But depending on the circumstances, what could have been what time of the month, could have been after a recent breakup, she took that information and felt, oh my gosh, maybe I am 2 pounds overweight. And this began a little cycle of body image issues and adopting a belief pattern that was contrary to her well-being. And so that's just one. There's 3 ways we get these blocks. That's from learned behavior is one of the first ones.
Thank you so much for explaining that, because I really like the example that you gave, because when we do that, we can really relate to it. And I think a lot of us have maybe not that exact story, but something similar in our upbringing where someone has said something to us and it creates basically the whole pattern, maybe especially through that high school era. I know there's so many of us who have had negative things said to us during high school. It's a really challenging time, or maybe even younger. And so when we create, like you said, just to reiterate that when we're creating this pattern, subconscious pattern, that then can like ebb and flow into influence us in our current state of life and healing. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So a lot of what we try to do is we have some unique remedies we use out of Switzerland. They're designed to help dissolve some of these subconscious blocks. People say, Nick, are you telling me meditation doesn't work? Are you telling me law of attraction doesn't work, or all of my mindfulness? And no, bring what you have and see if I can't add to it. See if we just can't take you to that next level. Because it's hard to go to a therapist and discuss life's problems when maybe this belief system isn't viewed as a problem. It may not really be on your radar when really in actuality, it is the problem that may be causing most of your difficulties.
Yes, totally. And when we're looking at these deep subconscious patterns, what are some of the most common ones in your practice that people face, whether that's how they're specifically impacting their lives, I think, but really, do you see in your own practice a specific theme, I guess, so that is what I'm asking, or a pattern?
Yeah, so these come in all different shapes and sizes, just like we do as people. I deal mainly with women because they're a little more open to talking about these sort of things. So
we're like open books a little bit, huh?
Yeah, just a little, right? So I see a lot more of those sort of scenarios. But I have a lot of victims who've been through different types of traumatic events.
Yeah.
Which is actually the second way we form these subconscious beliefs. It could have been abuse as a child, or it could have been a bad divorce or a bad breakup. I think of a guy I had who was a college roommate of mine, really happy guy, met this girl, thought was the love of his life, and he was ready to propose, and she broke up with him, and he was never the same. I mean, the next 3 years of college, he was just a different person, right? More reserved, more shy, wasn't outgoing like he used to be. It affected him so deeply that it really changed who he was. Now, I haven't seen him in many years. Hopefully he'll come out
Maybe
of
he's
that.
listening.
Maybe he's listening, right? So it's hard to say, oh, this is the one sort of problem, right? But different types of abuse are a big one. It can vary, depend on life circumstances, the death of a loved one, all bad parenting, things like that. So it's hard to say, oh, this is common, because it's life. All of its beautiful variety and not so fun variety creates these circumstances that life seems to know right where to hit us and right to make us grow the most.
Exactly. I love that, because it's true what you said. We all come to the table with a different problem for the meal. It's okay. We can look at our life, I think there's a commonality I see a lot of times with my patients in relationship, because like you said, women is who I mostly see, especially because I concentrate on women's health. And what I see, I think most commonly is that relationship aspect. And what you said too about weight and or food eating disorders. I think I see that really commonly in my practice. And that's a lot. I ask specific questions on my intake forms about trauma. Have you had a trauma? Do you have that particular type of thing in your intake forms? What are we, or is that kind of like what you dive deeper into in that first visit? Have you had an experience of trauma? Is this trauma still circulating in your brain or in your life at this present moment?
It's for women, there's just, at least in our society, body image is an issue that is prevalent and one that
Mhm.
everyone deals with. I'm not sure there is a young girl who doesn't go through a stage of body image or
Mm.
issues and or may even continue to have it off and on. And that's
Mhm.
part of life too, right?
Right.
Um, but it can vary so much. I had one individual, a woman who had come to me in her 60s, and we started talking about what had been going on, and she had a lot of obsessive compulsive sort of
Mhm.
problem, washing her hands, a few different things like that. And she was smart enough to know by now that she knew what this was the cause of. She says, I was in Haiti. I grew up in Haiti, and I was coming home one night. I was 17 and I was raped. And
Mm.
she said, I know my problem is, she says, after that, I never felt clean. I couldn't get clean. And
Yeah.
so these things, they can run our lives if we let them.
Mm.
And the key is, number one, if you can go to a therapist, that's great. But if talk therapy was king, then we would go to a talk therapist and then we would all be better. But we know that doesn't always work. So then we're left to, okay, should I go try some yoga? Maybe I'll try the mushrooms. Maybe I'll try ayahuasca. Maybe I'll see, maybe it's my hormones. And we're just grasping at all sorts of things to try to find an answer when still it is, how can we really help change this belief pattern about myself?
Yes, that's so true. And I think that as we're going through time, we see that change in evolution of our emotions too, with our how our body is evolving, especially so quickly on the planet that we live in now, where everything is at this fast speed. But I don't always think our emotions run at the speed that our planet's running in. Especially we can see that with COVID, right? It was very like a high anxiety and high stress. And I feel like people are still trying to catch up with that particular like huge trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
the last way that we really begin to form these subconscious blocks, okay, we talked about a little bit about trauma, learned behavior. And then the third way is we inherit these things.
Mm.
So mom and dad, they give us, who we are, right? Whether we want to believe it or not, there is nature versus nurture, and nature is powerful. Okay.
Mm.
So what we inherit from our parents, it becomes a huge part of who we are. That's why a lot of people can say he's an alcoholic. His dad was an alcoholic, and so was his grandpa, and then before
Mm.
that. Or she can say grandma was a worrier and great grandma had anxiety, and
Mm.
that's why you have anxiety. And there is some truth to this,
Mm.
that what happens to our parents and how they deal with circumstances can get passed on to us. Dr. Rachel Yehuda of the University of Jerusalem did a study on Holocaust. You may have heard this, right? She studied the children of Holocaust survivors. Those children who were born to parents who had been through a concentration camp and the whole negative experience, those children had a much higher natural level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, makes them
Mhm.
with a more propensity to be anxious and to be on the edge like that. And they were higher than those of the parents who were Jewish but didn't go through the Holocaust. So we can pass good things and bad things on to our children, and yet we are the recipient of those. And that's what's beautiful in that way, because now we get to be the person to break the chain or create the circumstance that we can stop that from being passed on.
Mm.
But on the flip side, what about you have a parent that goes through something really difficult and they
Mhm.
overcome it and they forgive and they're able to move through it and it makes them stronger? That's what I like to call the resiliency gene. That
Mhm.
gene can get passed on. So those kids, you look at them and go, "God, they just don't stop. They can get through anything and nothing phases them, right?" We can pass good and bad things on to our children. And the idea is, of course, to find those things that are holding us back, heal from them, and pass good things on to the future generation.
Yeah, Nick, I love you brought up the genetic component. Of course, on the genetic genius, I love to talk about genetics.
Right.
Yeah, and hereditary aspects of our health are so key, and we're learning more and more about how that is transparent in our lives today in health and prevention. And I think the most recent studies have shown that, I'm sure that it goes back farther than this, but the most recent studies show that it goes back 6 generations. So you're just talking about basically with the Holocaust, I guess that could be up to 3 generations now, maybe even more, depending on that. But so we can see through studies that's affecting our health, like you said, our anxiety, our physical health, like it could be from malnutrition. My genes, for example, with my family in the potato famine in Ireland. So I'm careful of that when I'm looking at my genetic components and seeing how my body responds to certain things that might be out of balance. So that's really important too. We're talking about the physical component coming in from our family, the emotional component coming in. And that's what makes us, like you're saying, this individual who we are in the present moment in time, correct?
Yeah, very nice. Great explanation.
Thank you. So let's talk. You mentioned earlier, Nick, something I wanted us to go back on. You mentioned these little remedies. You said, I think they were from Switzerland. And I would love for you to talk about these. I think they're called Rubimeds, and talk about this particular therapy and how does it address, so we're talking all about the emotions. And now, like, how does that really go into those deep-seated emotions, those patterns, those subconscious patterns that we were talking about in this unique way? Because I think that's the piece that we're really hitting on today, because there's so many things like you talked about with mindset, but how can we use something like the Rubimed and talk a little bit about what it is and how it works?
So it's hard to, if you think, oh, this is my problem, then we may focus on that. But what if your
Right.
problem is really not on your radar?
Yeah.
What if it's much deeper than that? What if it's part of your personality, but that's a personality part that you learned or took on and it doesn't serve you very well?
Right.
So years ago, probably 15 years ago, I began working for a company out of Europe. And the original company was out of Canada, and so they would probably come down to visit you at Bastille
Yeah.
and do some trainings there. And these particular homeopathic line was created by a doctor out of Germany originally. He's now in Switzerland. And he was working with a lot of women patients with different emotional issues and hormone sort of things. And he was using a lot of Bach flower remedies. Today, all of us can go to a Sprouts or our natural grocer and most likely find some Bach flower remedies on the shelf. Wonderful remedies. But back then, 25 years ago, these were not so common. And he said, I was getting outstanding results. And it was great for business because they were always coming back. They always come back. But he said it seemed like it would help, but there was always this deeper something that they just couldn't get over. So he began to start to combine a bunch of different homeopathics, individual remedies at different potencies to create 1 or 2 remedies with 5 or 6 ingredients. He ended up creating 28 different remedies and started testing on his patients, started getting exceptional results. They got invited onto a program similar to Oprah here in the US, and it just flooded Europe and became a household name. So it's only been in the US off and on for about the last decade. The FDA had it in here about a decade ago, and then they kicked it out. So it took us a while to get it through FDA and have it manufactured here in the US in a FDA approved facility. But essentially, that was the start of this whole Rubimed movement, that you could technically take some homeopathic remedies and it could help dissolve some of these old patterns of thinking. So I'll give you an example from my own life, right? When I was first tested for these remedies, the first, we call it a set of beliefs, we call it a conflict. The first set of beliefs that I pulled up for was isolation. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not really that isolated of a person. I grew up on a potato farm in Idaho. I've got great parents. I have great siblings. I had a great upbringing. Little teeny town. The most trouble we got into was to steal stop signs and kiss too many girls. I had a really, really good upbringing, right? And so I said, okay, give me the remedies and I figure I'm going to work for this company. I better have said I can at least take these. So the therapy is rather slow. The one thing people need to know is this is not like I'm going to feel 100% in 30 days. It takes some time to dissolve these blocks. Some of them we've had for decades, so we can't just
Right.
expect to
It's
just
not like poof overnight. Ta-da!
But during the first 30 days, most people, the biggest side effect they experience is vivid dreaming. Okay. So I remember within the first couple of weeks, I had a lot of dreams, but one of them, I had an old memory and I saw myself, and it was like I was there again. I saw myself grade school, walking out on the playground over to the baseball diamond to go play with some of my buddies. And a couple of them started making fun of me. And I saw myself turn around and go play on the Mickey bars with someone else. And it was like I was there. And then boom, I snapped out of it. And it was just, I was like, wow, I don't think I've thought about that since the day it had happened. And over each set of bottles or each conflict, set of beliefs can take a few months to dissolve. Okay. So this particular conflict on isolation required 3 months. I was going to be on this combination for 3 months. And I remember by the end of that 3 months, I remember thinking to myself, you know what? Maybe I do isolate myself sometimes. Maybe I wall myself off a little bit. Maybe I stick to myself more than I probably should. Maybe it's not so healthy. And then I've had more experiences with that as well as I went into it. But it seems to have the ability to allow you to think differently than you could before. And that's the true magic. It's not something takes you over. It's just, wow, where did that thought come from?
The thought pattern can
It's the
shift,
thought
right?
pattern.
That makes total sense.
I had one practitioner who told me here a few weeks ago, she said, I had a cop that I was treating, and he had been on the remedies for a couple of months, and he came in for a change, right? A change in remedies. And he says, yeah, I was at the office the other day and I was on my way out, and the girls at the front desk said, hey, we don't know what you're doing, but we like you a whole lot better now. So just keep doing whatever it is you're doing.
Okay.
So it was enough that other people were noticing that he wasn't his usual, maybe grumpy self or whatever it might have been. That's what these remedies they have the power to do.
Yes, shifting on that emotional level. Sometimes we don't notice it. Like you said, the other people in our environment, like, oh yeah, she's a lot less crabby today. What's going on over there?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's an important part of emotional blocks, so to speak. That's not a word that I always like to use, but when we have this emotional, maybe it's a barrier. How do we cross the barrier, cross the wall, using your own words, or how do we get through that wall that we've created around ourselves? And homeopathy and Rubimeds, they're great for that because they address the body in this really subtle way, which our emotional body is. It's not, we have the force of our physical body, and our emotional body is just like it's floating through the ethers that we're always shifting and changing. And we don't always notice it as much.
It's interesting, but in our medical system today, we like to segment everything.
Exactly.
You got a problem with your brain, then go see a neurologist. You got a problem with your kidneys, go see the nephrologist. And really, the body isn't meant to be that way. It's not supposed to be segmented. So we get into now what this method was originally called psychosomatic energetics. Okay. You have psycho, which is the mind, and soma, which is the Greek for body. So what we don't understand is, or we don't always consider, I should say, is that a lot of times these emotional experiences, if they are not properly handled, not properly healed, they just don't go away. They will often stick their sore thumb out in a physical illness, as a physical illness. I was fine, doc, until this event happened.
XYZ. Yeah. Boom. And then I felt different since this happened.
Yeah. After the divorce, I just couldn't get my stuff together anymore.
Yeah.
Or I can't get over my wrecked childhood. Or if someone has come along far enough to recognize that, a lot of times they haven't. They just show up in your office and they go, I've had the MRI, I've had the CT, here's all my blood work, my thyroid's fine. I don't have any answers.
And they've been told nothing's wrong with me.
I've been to 10 doctors. They say it's in my head.
Yeah.
They say this. This must be stress.
Right. It must be stress. Right.
Must be stress.
It must be stress. Yes. So whatever you do, just relax. Everything will be better.
So a lot of the times when we look at certain skin conditions, chronic diseases like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, they have highly suspicious emotional components to those sort of disorders.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Nick, because we wanted to ask you about autoimmune diseases because this is a huge piece of my practice. I see, especially with Hashimoto's and women facing autoimmune diseases, like you said, like skin, like psoriasis. So how, when we're looking at those conditions from the emotional perspective, how do those subconscious patterns start to play in the role of managing these really specific health challenges that are there? Some of them are epidemics, I think, that we're experiencing on our planet right now.
Well, first of all, we can't ignore that there are purely physical conditions. So we should always be aware of that. There could be scenarios where there really is toxicity problems, there really is electrosmog issues and all those things. But at the same time, a lot of times people they don't want to address the emotional component, or maybe it hasn't really been on their radar. Often by addressing that, we can make huge changes in some of these physical illnesses. In fact, we did a study in Switzerland. It was published in the Swiss Holistic Medicine Journal. The whole Rubimed method is not new, by the way. So it's been around 25 years. In Europe, it's got 8 books, 300 articles, 11 clinical studies. So it's well documented. We're not just talking about a pie in the sky ideas. They did study 11 different centers, over 1,000 patients, and all these patients had a host of all kinds of diseases, skin conditions, chronic fatigue, ADHD, depression, anxiety, lots of different conditions. And they were asked to rate their response to the therapy after 13 months of being on it. So remember, placebo is great in the first 30, 60 days, but it's hard to mask something for a year and still think you're on a placebo. So they were asked to rank how their therapy was over those 13 months. They could rank it as excellent, good, satisfactory, or not satisfactory. And 86.6% of the people ranked their therapy as excellent, good, or satisfactory.
That's great.
Which is, I'll take that over any pharmaceutical study that they use to get FDA clearance and drug approval for.
No side effects.
No side effects. And if they are, here they are. Here's all the list of side effects. It really has a profound effect to make huge changes. The one key with Rubimed is you have to have patience, okay? Because these blocks are often deep and a large part of an individual, and it takes time to unravel. So I tell people, give me a year. It's not expensive. We're going to spend $100 a month on this. This is not a $5,000 program. Give me a year. Just try these.
Right.
And
see how they work.
I promise you, we can take you to a new level that you're not at right now.
Yeah, and I think that's really important what you said about the time frame of healing, because I think that people forget, one, they might not recognize that emotional component is even affecting their life. And then also, like you said, where has it come from? Has it come from childhood? How long has it been going on in their life? Where is it stemming from? And we were talking a little bit about autoimmune disease. I shouldn't say can't. It's a little bit more challenging to have a complete shift in that health with so quickly when it's been something that has really been ingrained in our health. With that being said, I have seen many people shift in a quick amount of time, but typically it takes a little bit longer because you have to change so many different aspects. That's the emotional health. Maybe you're changing your lifestyle components. You're changing all your food components. There's so many different things that it's challenging sometimes to do that overnight. It depends on the patient, depends on the motivation, I think, too. But I think when we address the emotional component so quickly in the process of healing, that's where we see the change happen at a much more expansive or expedited rate, because we're addressing something that is buried within us. It's not on the surface. Maybe it's on the surface, but we're masking it, right? With our shield. Okay, I can't bring this to the surface because if I do, everything in my life is going to break down and shatter across my planet.
To give you an idea just how powerful some Rubimed can be, when I was about on my 8th month, okay, so I had gone through 2 or 3 different sets of different issues. I had a really profound change for me. I grew up in a religious home, a Christian home, and it was always very important to me. It had served me well. I was in my 30s by the time, and it had served me well, and I was very entrenched in this way of thinking. And I remember getting up one morning, going to a little Saturday morning meeting that I had always gone to for years, right? Never questioned it. And I remember getting in my car, and it was almost like I heard a voice like, what in the world are you doing? And this was huge for me because I never would have questioned this, who I was. It had served me well. It was not a bad thing. But from that point on, I began to question some of the stuff that I had been taught as a kid from a religious standpoint. And I'm still Christian today, but it's much more inward and less outward observance that was a fairly high focus of the sect that I grew up in. But that experience with Rubimeds profoundly changed who I was. And I never would have ever even thought that it was not serving me or to my best interest. And it took 8-9 months before I got to that point.
That's something that you might want to address in the first month of healing, your spirituality. But I think that a lot of people have that shift because it wasn't something that we chose through growing up. So, and that a lot of things are that from the religious standpoint, so, okay, here's what the family's doing. Here's what you're going to do. And I myself have gone through the same type of thing. I went to Catholic school, all those pieces. And I was the total opposite. I rebelled. I was like, I cannot do this because I just had much more like broader pieces of my existence. I needed to just be like that, kind of like rebel out and find my own way. But through that, then I found other pieces of spirituality that really resonated with me, like Buddhism and all different types of things, yoga, philosophy, Hinduism, things that helped me to see my spiritual like being in a much like broader sense, so to speak, like in a universal way. And that was not something that happened overnight. And I'm still expanding my growth of it. But I think that if we were given the choice as kids, what would that be like? Okay, here's all the things that you could do. What do you like? What resonates with you? What kind of spirituality do you want to try? I think I'll try a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. It would be a much different outcome. It'd be interesting. A great experiment.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to try that. That's going to be my next study. Oh, so we're talking about the piece of trauma, and I'd love for us to talk about the trauma with women, which we touched base a little bit more. But are there any specific techniques that you use in conjunction with using the Rubimed that are helpful, whether that from that mindset component, I guess I'm asking, that help with that transformational healing aspect or health healing journey?
I don't employ any other techniques when it comes for me dealing with the emotions.
What about
I'm not
acupuncture, though?
Yes, I can do that, of
I
course.
can do that.
Rubimed seems to be the thing for me, for what I do and those sort of things. But that doesn't mean someone else can't maybe take that and use EMDR
And
or,
what's that? Can you explain what that is for our listeners out there? They might not know that term.
Yeah, so it's another term of a technique that a lot of therapists, psychotherapists are using these days. Allows you to tap into the source of some of these emotions and where they're coming from. So that's the basics of what it is. Someone else would be much better at explaining it than I am. But it's got a great history. It works really for a lot of people. And so like I said early on, I said, bring whatever you're doing, right? And see if we put you on Rubimed, see if we can't take you to that next level, right? Make things that much better and see if we can heal you even further.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, because I think we're always striving to be to that next level of health, especially now as people are focusing on longevity, anti-aging. How can I work backwards? Be the next Benjamin Button.
Right.
Or Benjamina.
Exactly.
Is that female bird?
One thing that one of the biggest things that happens to people when they go through Rubimed is I find a lot of people that once they get 6, 7, 8, 9 months in, you would be amazed that the root of a lot of what they deal with in their emotions is the unwillingness to forgive. And people will find out, you know what, it's better for me to forgive and let go than it is to stay angry and hold on. A lot of what happens in healing is really recognizing that we're all human, and yeah, you probably went through some really horrible things and it was unfair and it was hard and it was difficult, but often those things are what make us who we are, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Those are those things that make you say, maybe I should be a health practitioner so I can help other people that are dealing with the same problems that I was dealing with, or I could be a therapist so I can help those people who, when I didn't really get that much help, or that one individual will help me and I want to be like them. So it's very interesting how it's our problems that really shape us And often we find our footing for our purpose in life out of what we've gone through.
Yeah, being human is messy, but the mess is what makes it fun, right? If it was just all, I don't know, black and white with no messy color
Right.
all over the paper, it'd be pretty boring. Just like the trees behind you in your beautiful painting. Like if it was all black and white, it wouldn't have the same impact, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So one of the things I love about you, Nick, is that you have done a lot of collaboration with different doctors from around the world that you've mentioned. How does this collaboration influence your approach from healing trauma, healing emotional trauma, depression, anxiety? Because I think we have a different quote unquote approach here in the United States. Is a different. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience and how it might have changed your vision and approach to how you practice now.
Yeah, so I've been exposed to a lot of doctors from all over the world. When I worked for this company out of Germany, I was responsible for doing a lot of the training. And of course, I got to participate in a lot of different lecture series and from these doctors as they would come from Europe and whatnot. And everybody has a little bit of piece of something that can be valuable. And that has been my approach is when my son was 2 years old, he went through a vaccine and within 2 weeks he lost all eye contact. He wouldn't answer to his name and he disappeared
Oh my
and
gosh.
lost all his speech, was diagnosed with autism. He was the catalyst for, where I am today. And so doing that, I was exposed to lots of different things to try to help him the best that I could. What
Yeah.
was going on in Europe, what was over here, what was over there. And when, as a practitioner, you want the best stuff that you can find to help people. And for most of us, we'll pretty much go wherever we have to go to try to find it, find
Mhm.
something that works.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, someone can say, hey, this really helped me. And that's really what you're after as a practitioner.
Right. Finding the thing that works when you, like you mentioned, when we try it on ourselves, try to use it with our family, and we see profound transformation. And we're like, okay, yes, I can stand behind this product. And there's so many different products out there. It's just mind boggling. And I think that searching on the internet will show you a lot of different products. And
Right.
listeners out there, it's important that you're using a great resource like myself and Nick here, because you want to make sure that you're using a product that helps you, right? That we can stand behind and know, because we've seen it work with our patients. And a lot of those products are not made well. They have fillers, they stand on the shelves, or not kept in a good heated or cool environment. So there's lots of things that can change your supplement or change your homeopathic remedy. And we want to make sure that what you're taking is helping and not just being eliminated down the drain or wasting your money. So I think that's just a little caveat there, listeners. It's important that you're taking something we know that works. There's studies that have been done behind it, and it's a powerful product.
Exactly. Well put.
One piece I wanted you to talk about today too, Nick, if you don't mind, is affirmations and meditations as a way for really helping personal growth. And if you do use those in combination with Rubimed, that's great. But I would love for you to talk about how using some of those techniques, when you're using them in your practice, how those can really help us to break that negative subconscious pattern at a much deeper level.
Yeah, so I think being mindful, having those meditative practices, those are all they're great, right? And they help us help find ourselves and ground ourselves to those things that we want to improve on in our life. I do think that they're limited because they're only allowed to tap into what we're psychologically aware that we want to change. So I do think that they can take us far. There's a lot of people out there who say, I've been meditating for years, right? And I've been using all my law of attraction stuff and all this sort of things, and my life's still jacked up, and so I think those things have their limits, to be quite honest, rather than they are what open things up. But I think be open-minded enough to try all those things together.
Right.
Rubimed that can help unlock things that I'm not aware of. EMDR, a good therapist, being mindfulness, gratitude journals, meditation, whatever it is that you want to do. Like I've said, bring what you have and see if we can't add to it. The goal is to make people better. and all make them the best version of themselves.
Yes, exactly. And I think that when we're using all of those combinations together, like you said, that's when we can see some profound results. And there's talking about meditation, there's so many different forms out there. And I lived at a yoga retreat center for almost a year, and I meditated like 3 hours a day. So I'm not recommending it. Like it's great. I'm sure it transformed me for sure. But in this current place and time, we don't have time for that in our regular lives. If you're living on a yoga retreat center, yeah, but who has 3 hours in their regular? If I did that, I don't know what I would do the rest of my day. See
Right.
patients, like all that stuff. So I think trying smaller amounts, this is what I find that works for myself, is smaller amounts of using those things in smaller doses, like as a punch, is the biggest impact. So in the morning, using my emotional pieces, my affirmations and meditations, and then a little dose of it in the afternoon, and then another dose of it in the evening, right? To help balance things throughout the day instead of it being this massive, large impact, which can be a time suck sometimes.
Right. Yeah,
And
those good ideas.
yeah, and I like what you said too about the emotional component, because the Rubimeds and using the emotional component can help accelerate those other things that we're doing. Like you mentioned the Bach flower essences earlier, that those can accelerate those tools that are on the emotional level.
That's exactly right. Yeah, perfect.
So another thing that you mentioned Nick, is about one thing you talk about is the just change how you think mantra. And I'd love for you to talk about exploring like this, about what practical steps listeners can really take to empower themselves when they overcome this like hardwiring aspect of their components, like the subconscious, because I think when, or maybe I'll let you dive deeper into that about just changing how you think.
So the whole premises with Rubimed is that is a catalyst to help change how you think,
Mm,
because we get stuck in these sort of patterns and we may not always be able to unlock them through our meditations and our yoga practices and things like that, as good as they are. And so by adding in there something like Rubimed that might give you the ability to really change how you think,
mm,
to be able to say, you know what, there's something about me that I think I need to change, or I didn't realize it. I am this way, and I can see how it's hurting my relationships, or I see how my behavior is hurting myself, right? So we have a lot of patients that have addiction sort of issues, and we've had great luck with those because sure, there's a physical component to an addiction, but there's most likely a heavier emotional or
mhm.
mental dependency associated with how one got involved and why they stay to it in the first place. So we want to look at everything that's involved to try to find what will work best with the patient.
Yeah, that's so true. And I would love to see in some kind of ideal world. Well, I know they have these clinics in Europe, but for us to have clinics here in the United States where we're working for people that have these addiction disorders and helping them on the emotional component, we're using things like Rubimed and pieces where we're using alternative healthcare. We have hardly any alternative healthcare clinics where people can go for long periods of time in the US, but we have so many of them in Europe. So hopefully that will overflow into us at some point, because that's the change we need to have. We need to have more places where people can go and
Sure.
yeah, leave their life behind for a little bit and really address the problems and make shifts, because otherwise it's really hard to overcome an addiction. It's ingrained in every single cell within the body and
Right.
cries out if you try to take out that addiction from your life. It's like, what are you doing to me? So we have to have emotional support if we're going to do that to someone.
That's exactly right.
So, what do you think is the future of Rubimed and quote unquote therapy in a bottle? How do you really envision this component impacting our future medicine, future emotional and mental health over the next, let's say, 10 years?
Well, I think Rubimed has a unique spot that can help a lot of people. Number one, you don't necessarily have to talk about your problems with a Rubimed. Okay. You certainly can. The therapists that we have had use this say, Nick, I can get 3 years of improvement in 6 months when they're on Rubimed because they are able to process and get through things quicker.
Mhm.
So I do think that there's a large potential for growth. We're looking for patients, of course, but we're looking for practitioners, people like yourself,
Mhm.
naturopaths, integrative medical doctors, anyone who has an interest in natural health and trying to heal emotionally and become the best version of themselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's sick. It could just be someone who's, you know what, I want personal growth. I want to be somewhere, I want to be a better version of myself. I'm happy with who I am, but what if I can go to the next level?
What does that look like?
And to do that, one typically has to unpackage some stuff that maybe they've not completely healed from, or Rubimed will allow them to see a place where they can improve and move forward. So
Right.
I think the growth can be very strong. This is our first year here in the US. So we've been open now about 6 months. So we'd love to get together with people that are interested and practitioners. We have a practitioner training coming up end of August down in Los Angeles area. We're looking for those people who want to join us.
Love that. Congrats on that being open and being in the US, because I know that, like you were talking in the beginning, there was a shift where Rubimed couldn't be in the United States for a little while. So I'm so happy to see that it's thriving again. It's great. And as we're wrapping up today, Nick, I have loved our conversation. I have one last question for you, and then we're going to talk about a couple other things to find you and how people can get in touch with you. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to make the biggest impact on the health and welfare of our planet?
Oh, I think I'd like to create a large clinic, what you were talking about earlier, where you could
Yeah.
have all these different modalities and you could treat
Mhm.
a lot of patients and make a lot of difference. I
Yeah.
think that'd be a great way to use it. Start with an unlimited
Yeah.
budget.
No.
Maybe get a few surf trips in and as well.
Okay, ding, you got that one. That's great. Yes, you can start that in Idaho. So I have a couple of friends that practice there, so I'll send them your way.
Very good.
Yeah, nice. Idaho's beautiful. What part do you live in?
I'm in the Boise area.
Oh, nice. That's great. I've been through that kind of like zone. I haven't been to Coeur d'Alene, but I have a friend who lives up there and I've heard it's just fabulous up there.
It is. It's very nice.
Yeah, lovely. So tell us, Nick, how people can find you, website, follow you on Instagram, and then tell us about your free call you have for people interested in finding out more about Rubimed.
So you can find us at our website, which is Privia, Privia Naturals with an S.com, Privia Naturals. Right on there, you'll find a big button that says, we want to hear your story. So it's a free call. If you want to call, we'd love to hear your story, what you're going through, what you want to accomplish, if you might be a good fit for Rubimed and getting yourself to that next level. So we'd love to reach out and connect with us there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nick. I learned so much about emotional healing and Rubimed. It was a wonderful conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it as well.